It was May 21st, 2025. A meeting was underway in the Oval Office. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa was visiting then-President Trump. Suddenly, the discussion took a sharp, unexpected turn. President Trump made a very serious accusation. He claimed that white farmers in South Africa were facing state-sanctioned violence. He even suggested a genocide was happening against them. To support his grave assertions, President Trump presented what he termed evidence. One piece was a video, previously amplified by his advisor, Elon Musk. This video purportedly showed burial sites of over 1,000 white South African farmers. However, the reality of the video was quite different. It actually showed a memorial from 2020. The crosses were a tribute to Glenn and Vida Rafferty, a couple murdered on their farm. Nathan Rafferty, their son, clarified that the crosses were symbolic, not evidence of mass graves. President Trump didn't stop with the video. He also held up an image from a blog called American Thinker. This image supposedly showed victims of violence in South Africa. But like the video, this image was also misrepresented. The photograph was not from South Africa at all. The term white genocide might sound like a new and shocking revelation, especially when spoken in the Oval Office. However, this phrase and the ideas behind it are not new at all. They have a long and troubling history. These ideas have deep roots in far-right ideologies, primarily in the United States and Europe. For decades, extremist groups have used this concept to sow discord and fear. It's a cornerstone of white supremacist thinking designed to create an us versus them mentality. The narrative suggests that white people, their culture, and their way of life are under deliberate existential attack globally. This white genocide narrative often paints a picture of white people as an endangered group. It suggests they are being systematically displaced, disempowered, or even exterminated. When confronted with a claim as serious as genocide, the first place to look for truth is the data. And the data regarding a white genocide in South Africa, particularly targeting farmers, tells a very different story from the myth. Firstly, there is absolutely no official data from any credible source that supports the idea of a targeted genocide against white farmers. South African police services do not provide race-based crime statistics in a way that would substantiate such a claim. They track crimes, including murders on farms, but the narrative of a racially targeted extermination campaign is not supported by their official findings. In the last 3 months of 2024, there were 12 people murdered on farms in South Africa. Of these 12 victims, only one was a white farmer. The other victims included several black laborers or security workers. President Cyril Ramaphosa found himself in an awkward position during that Oval Office meeting. He was reportedly quite surprised when President Trump presented the video of white crosses and made the genocide accusations. President Ramaphosa's response was crucial. He immediately and firmly denied the existence of any state-sanctioned violence or genocide against white farmers in South Africa. He aimed to correct the record, directly countering the narrative being presented to him and, by extension, to the world watching. President Ramaphosa did not shy away from acknowledging South Africa's challenges. He openly admitted that the country struggles with high crime rates, a serious issue that the government is actively working to address. However, he provided critical context that is often missing from the white genocide narrative. He emphasized that crime in South Africa is not a phenomenon that targets one racial group. Instead, it affects all races and communities across the nation. To understand land and safety in South Africa, one must look at its history. Apartheid, from 1948 to 1994, enforced racial segregation and discrimination. Black, colored, and Indian populations were systematically oppressed. They were denied basic rights, including land ownership. This ensured white minority rule and economic dominance. Apartheid's legacy includes gross inequality in land ownership. The Natives' Land Act of 1913 forced black South Africans into infertile reserves. Fertile and mineral-rich land was taken by the white minority. By the end of apartheid, a small percentage owned most land. This historical theft of land is deeply emotional and symbolic. Contemporary South Africa is a nation of incredible diversity, breathtaking landscapes, and vibrant cultures. It has made significant strides since overthrowing the oppressive apartheid regime. The country boasts a democratic constitution, an independent judiciary, and a free press. There's a palpable energy and resilience among its people who are working towards a more inclusive and prosperous future. However, like any nation, South Africa also faces very real and serious challenges. These challenges are complex and deeply rooted, often stemming from the legacy of its divided past. One of the most pressing issues is the high rate of crime. This includes violent crime, such as murder, robbery, and assault, which affects communities across the country, urban and rural, rich and poor. Farm attacks, which are attacks on farms and small holdings, are a specific and concerning part of this broader crime problem. These attacks are brutal and terrifying for those who experience them. The white genocide narrative in South Africa is deeply perilous. It distorts the reality of the country's challenges, making honest conversations difficult. Instead of understanding complex issues, it paints a false picture of racial extermination. This narrative serves specific political agendas, spreading disinformation and stoking racial fears. But the truth refuses to stay buried. South Africa is not a battlefield in someone else's culture war. It's a sovereign nation fighting to define itself on its own terms. These narratives don't just misinform, they erase. They erase the lived reality of millions of South Africans still facing the legacy of apartheid, inequality, and land theft. To weaponize their history is not only dishonest, it's dangerous. So let the record be clear. What's happening in South Africa is not genocide. It's reckoning. It's restoration. And for those who fear justice, justice will always feel like revenge. As the African Diaspora saying goes, I am because we are, and we are because I am.